Okay, we know there are brands that are willing to spend real money. So, well, let me set the stage for what most of us are dealing with on the okay, what kind of inbound do we get? Or, what is the obvious play that most people do in the local newsletter? You can imagine is, hey, I'm going to go to the local bakery. I'm going to talk to the lady who owns this animal place. It's just her and her husband and two employees. And that can be very difficult, right? They don't have much
Yeah.
money. They're watching every penny. It's coming out of their food budget, their personal budget. And it seems like, again, back to either legacy or even some of the players who I do know who have had on my show who are doing really well. They're doing really well because they're getting in front of the bigger players, right? The regional advertisers, the big businesses that have $20,000, $50,000 a month marketing budgets. So first off, do you agree that that's the play, is to try to go after those bigger players? And then if so, the obvious question there is, how do you do it?
Let's start with the lowest hanging fruit possible. Can we do that first?
Let's do it. Okay. The small business, you mean?
No, just like it's a tactical piece of advice.
Okay.
Email your list and ask if there's anyone on your list that wants to sponsor your newsletter.
Okay.
Because you have lots of people probably in your local community who work in the local community, who might be decision makers at a company in your local community. So they previously may not have even known that that was an option to say, hey, you have a little, whether it's a dedicated blast or it's an inclusion in at the top of every newsletter, or at some point where you're saying, hey, would you like to get in front of 20,000 engaged local Austin residents, or whatever it is, wherever you're based. And that is a constant thing that's in front of your readers' eyes, that they know that that's a possibility. So don't underestimate the ability to get leads from the people that you're already reaching. That's just like, let's just get that out of the way, because that you absolutely should be doing that on an ongoing basis. And by the way, this can't just be a one-off thing. You have to do this regularly, once a month, once a quarter, whatever it is. Like that's a very, very important thing. Okay, so now onto the question of like, should you go after the mom and pop shops? Should you go after some of the larger advertisers that have more budget? So let me share real quickly a story. So have you ever seen the movie Moneyball?
A long time ago.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with this, so it's a movie with Jonah Hill and Brad Pitt, and it was all it cataloged a true story where these two kind of unlikely heroes came together to form a baseball team, the Oakland A's, comprised of non-superstar players, right? They were not the MVPs, not the people, hitting all the home runs. It was people who had found a statistic that they thought contributed to winning, which was on base percentage, or OBP. And so they went out and they recruited players that had a high OBP. And so what they ended up doing was winning tons of games based on this stat. And so all these people they were just getting on base, singles, doubles, triples. And so the analogy here, the reason I bring this up, is that the way in which my wife and I have made $5 million over the last, 10, 15 years doing this is not hitting home runs all day long. It's hitting singles, doubles, triples, sometimes hitting home runs, but more often hitting singles and doubles, meaning that we do not discriminate when it comes to smaller brand, medium tier brand, larger brands that has larger advertising budget. Those are all great. They all contribute to keeping the lights on and building a great livelihood for ourselves. And so the lesson here is to not be myopic and only go after the big fish, because yes, when you land the big fish, it's great. It's large ticket sizes, but those are, at least in my experience, going to be fewer and further between for local media companies. Maybe if you have a global reach, it's going to be easier to only work with the large businesses, but that's not going to be the reality for most people listening to this or watching this, I would imagine. It's going to be a combination of all these things. And so I think you have to be realistic when it comes to who's going to be your most likely advertisers. It's going to be a mix.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things I've heard some of the people who are doing this successfully, because I'm very transparent with people that I'm not, is that what they're generally doing is trying to target the bigger players. And by bigger, we're still talking local. We're not talking Nikes, right? We're talking like the 30-person team, the trash company in town, right? That's much bigger than a bakery, but it's not a megacorp, right? That they're like, if you're going to put your effort in, they're targeting proactively those kind of probably more medium-sized companies, and then thinking of the smaller brands as leveraging those in the way you mentioned before, right? When you do a blast and those people come inbound, that of course you should work with them, right? They're coming inbound. As opposed to, I think where people can struggle is targeting the small brands where you're like putting proactive effort chasing them down, and they stall. It takes a lot of time to get them to do a $200 a month deal, where if you took all of that time you'd spend tracking them down into going after the medium size or larger brands, you'd make more money, right? So that's what I've heard. Again, I haven't done it myself yet, but of like go after the medium to larger ones while also trying to get the little ones, but more in a reactive way instead of proactive. What do you think?
I think overall that's the right approach. I think it depends on the market size. Some markets don't have even the medium or larger size. Yeah. And so I think philosophically, I think that's the right approach, is to because what I preach is like your ad strategy should it's a combination of both outreach and like outbound and inbound strategy, right? So as you said, like probably most of your inbound is going to be the smaller tier folks, and you do your best to service those. But if you're have a concerted effort to actually reach out and pitch some of these larger advertisers, I think that's the right approach. Again, what I will say though is there's trade-offs, right? Mm-hmm. Some of these larger advertisers might create a disproportionate amount of headache because there's more, red tape for you to go through. There's more rounds of revisions, and some of these smaller or mid-tier brands might not care at all. And so I think that from an operational perspective, there's definitely trade-offs.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense that there is. Although just on the small side, sometimes it can be just as bad too, because they don't
totally.
It's chaotic over there too, and in an opposite way, right? They're not too strict. They're not strict enough, and it's just kind of like they don't have their stuff together, which can be a challenge. But yeah, no, I think that's also just good advice in general, right? Trade-offs and everything. I think that's super important. What do you think? I heard somebody mention this, and I think this probably makes sense again.